So today I want to talk about really the ability to detach from neediness. Now, when you want something really badly, it feels like you can't let go sometimes. And so being able to master this actually allows you to really want this thing, this situation, this dynamic, whatever it is that you want, but it also allows you to hold it very lightly, easily let go of it. And I know that sounds really paradoxical, but it's absolutely possible. So I'm going to give you the exact steps that you can take today, 4 steps, so that you can accomplish this. For those of you who are new here, I'm Ketra Thompson, and I'm the creator of the Confident Connection Method, where I use hypnotherapy and relational mind coaching to help my clients create the love and the life that they want. So if you'd like to learn more, you can check out the link in the description below, where it will give you all the details and you can set up a completely complimentary consultation call so that you and I can chat and I can give you my best recommendations. So the first step in detaching from this neediness or longing maybe is to be able to realize that it's your mental story that's driving these expectations. Expectations are actually part of the issue here. And it doesn't mean we shouldn't have healthy expectations, but they should be translated into healthy boundaries. And so what we're doing when we have sort of this narrative in our mind is that it's a form of trying to control what's outside of yourself, trying to make them fit a narrative, make that other person fit into the story that you've created in your mind. And I'm not saying that you should let go of all expectations in regard to like being in a toxic relationship, someone narcissistic or something. You should just be like, well, they can do whatever they want. That's not what I'm talking about. It's about letting go of the narrative of who you think this person is without considering the reality of who they've shown themselves to be, or having this narrative in your mind that is a story that you want to fulfill, and you are automatically projecting those ideas onto the other person. So what I'm saying is that your mental story is what makes you think you need this person or this situation or this thing, and that's actually your problem, is the story underneath. So we aren't always aware that this story is creating this neediness in us, but it's controlling sort of a fantasy part of our brain. And what you need to do is you need to talk yourself down and out of that narrative into a new narrative that allows you to go with a little more uncertainty. Who knows? Maybe this will work, maybe it won't. I don't know. I'm just going to be curious about this. It's kind of like not celebrating before it happens. It's like not counting your chicks before they hatch. And our brain tries to do that. It tries to get us to think ahead into the future and create all of the scenarios that could happen. And it takes you out of the present moment. It keeps you in this fantasy world that isn't really serving you. So in that first step, you really want to identify what is the story, what's the projection, what is the narrative I'm trying to get this thing or this person to fit into. Because we have to realize that the subconscious mind is driving over 95% of everything we think, feel, and do. And so as it's being programmed when we're young, we are creating belief systems that aren't necessarily based on reality, right? They aren't necessarily based on truth and experience, because we're very young and inexperienced when we're programming this part of our subconscious mind. And so these stories are us trying to create a happy ending to something that didn't go well in our childhood. So we end up subconsciously thinking, without knowing it, that if I can just get this same type of person to give me the love, the security, the acceptance, the happy ending that I didn't get as a kid, then I'll know I'm okay. Then I know I'm lovable. And so we're trying to force that to happen by shoving someone into that narrative, and it doesn't work because people can't be conformed like that. Now, step 2 is actually the key to being able to get out of that mental narrative. And it is to have a purpose and vision for your life, regardless of anyone else's participation in your life. It's sort of that let go and let God mentality, right? Where we are going to trust that the universe is working in our favor, on our behalf, that there's some greater purpose, whatever your belief might be, whether it's religious, spiritual, or just an overall hopefulness that things are meant to go well for you and that you're learning and growing all the time. You can change your narrative to that. So the way that you do this is that you want to look for things that are good in your life already, things you can appreciate. And knowing that there's a reason you're going through this thing that feels frustrating, knowing that you're going to learn from it, that you're going to grow from it. And I've had some experiences in my life that have certainly caused me growth, have completely derailed my plans. But I wasn't thinking in the moment that I'm going to grow from this, and yay, this is a good thing. And, at the end of my 17-year marriage, I was very much entrenched in my Christian beliefs and had been conditioned to believe things should be a certain way, sort of a rigid way of structure within a marriage. And I was devastated with the knowledge of my then spouse having cheated and having sort of an emotional breakdown over some issues with work and all kinds of stuff. But it derailed everything I thought I knew about that person, about my life, about what I believed. And in the moment, I was completely crushed. Now, I can look back now and go, oh, thank God, like that took me to a place. Not immediately, because I didn't know how to do the healing work back then, but eventually took me to a place of so much more self-reflection, so much more growth. And I realized that it was almost something that needed to happen. Now, there's a difference between looking back on it and noticing it in real time. Now, I had some health issues this last year, and I was mad about them. I was frustrated, but it was one of the first times where I really knew beyond the shadow of a doubt that I was going to grow from this. I was going to learn from this. And I knew I was going to get through it. And I was able to see that in real time. So that's what I'm talking about, where you have a purpose and a vision for your life, that you know you're moving toward goodness. You know you have things in order as to what's so important in your life. You've got your priorities straight. That allows you to calibrate back to telling yourself the truth, that you know you're going to learn from this. You may not know exactly how you're going to grow, but you know you will. And this shifts your focus to growth and learning instead of your focus on creating a dynamic outside yourself, controlling someone else, or trying to fit someone into your box that you've created. And this takes me to step 3. Now, step 3 is accepting that people don't change unless they want to change. Accepting object permanence. So it's knowing that the way our brain works is that it gets more ingrained in the rut that it's in. So whatever you practice, that saying, practice makes perfect, it doesn't. Practice makes permanent. So whatever you practice thinking, doing, behaving in your life just gets dug in deeper into our neural pathways and becomes a part of us. And I remember a pastor saying one time, a long time ago, he made this comment. He said, people usually die as they have lived. And that is true. Now, if we stay in denial that other people are only, in control of themselves, that we can't change them, and that they tend to create more of what they are already creating, that is what that is. That's just denial. So the realization that growth and change is really, really hard, you have to come to that realization. Because if what they're experiencing in their life right now isn't more painful than the pain of growth and change, then it's not going to happen. People don't change just because you ask them to. They change when their pain in their life has become more painful than the growth required to change. Now, let's keep in mind that mental rut I was talking about actually helps people subconsciously be more unlikely to change. Because even when pain comes, if they reiterate the old story, the victim mentality, or, oh, woe is me, or it's always something, they just dig in deeper instead of deciding they're going to climb out of that rut and create the change. So it becomes very unlikely. And I know that feeling of having to face that reality. I left a very toxic relationship. I had a short second marriage to a very toxic person. And I knew 100% that the pain of staying was going to be far worse than the pain of growing and leaving. And I also knew I had to do it. Now, we think that's the success point. Yay, she left, right? That's not the success point. That is just the beginning. That's the beginning of climbing out of a rut and clawing your way into a new belief system, a new life, taking on challenges you haven't taken on before. But also, it's the beginning of choosing yourself and stopping the self-betrayal, which is really, really important. Now, the fourth step is actually something that most people miss in this process. It's getting connected to the sensations in your body. All these stories and narratives, they're up in your head. They are things you're ruminating on, things you might subconsciously be telling yourself mentally, like a record playing in the background of your mind your whole life because it's been there your whole life. So you got to get out of your head and you've got to get back into your body. And so when we go into fantasy, you forget about the sensations in your body. You're not paying attention to any feelings in your body at all. And so you really can't do both at the same time. So in order to get out of the fantasy, you've got to get back into your body. And so this is really the only way to let go of past and future thinking. It's to get present. Your brain doesn't have enough fuel to be running both programs. Your ability to stay present and in your body and your ability to be up in your mind in this narrative. It doesn't have the capability. And so what you want to do is you want to ground yourself. You can ground yourself in the moment by feeling the ground underneath your feet, by smelling the air, seeing if there's anything you can recognize, by naming 3 or 5 colors that you can see in the space that you're in. And then the last step, which is really important, is touch your own body. Touch your arms, touch your legs, bring your awareness to your body, and it gets you out of your head and reminds you, oh yeah, I have a body. And then we can appreciate the little things in the moment that we're in. We can get focused in the present moment. And it can take some practice to dial back into that present moment over and over again. But it's worth it because getting out of the narrative is the key. So when we do this, as sort of an overview, what we're doing is we're letting go of control of everything outside of ourselves. We have a vision and a purpose for our own life. We know how we want to feel. We know how we want to be, and we're not expecting the outside world to make that happen for us. We're able to meet our own needs by asking for connection when we need it, by communicating with the people in our world, by managing our time and emotions. And it's not something that anyone teaches us to do. And the biggest stumbling block to this is actually your subconscious programs, because you don't have access to your subconscious mind after the age of 7, aside from, traumatic events and complex trauma, which never is making your subconscious mind better. It's only derailing those beliefs in a negative way. And so if we don't have access to it and it's running over 95% of everything we think, feel, and do, then we are in that rut, in that loop. And so the battle to dig out of the rut becomes much more difficult because we're battling old subconscious programming the whole time that we're trying to get out of that. So that is what I do with my clients. I help them reframe those things subconsciously that they don't typically have access to, and then use the coaching process to help them with the implementation process. Because doing this alone is just battling willpower, which doesn't have a lot of strength in your brain. So I hope you can start implementing these steps that I've given you today, because you absolutely can on your own. But if you want to have less resistance in the process and a more direct approach to addressing that subconscious programming, then definitely check out that link in the description below where we can have a consultation call and I can explain even more about how this works and help you get some clarity on your specific situation. And as always, if this content resonates, I'd really appreciate it if you would click like and subscribe so you can be notified every time I post a new video. So until next time, I hope you curate a life by your own design.